Welcome to Brain Chat with the Nerdy Neurologist. I'm Dr. Mitzi Joy Williams, and I'm your board-certified neurologist and MS specialist. My mission is to engage, educate, and empower those affected by MS to become an active part of their healthcare team. Here on Brain Chat, we'll be talking all things MS, health and wellness, advocacy, and we'll throw a little bit of music and music therapy in there as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode. Hello. Happy Monday and welcome to Brain Chat, friends. I'm Dr. Mitzi, the Nerdy Neurologist, and super excited to be with you to talk about advocacy in multiple sclerosis. This is going to be a phenomenal episode. And I'm so excited about the wonderful guest that I have here with me on today's Brain Chat. You know how we do on Brain Chat. If you have not been on before, I'd love to see where you all are logging in from. Just type in the chat where you're logging and viewing us from. We appreciate everybody taking out their time to watch and learn. All right. Well, I bid you greetings from Atlanta, Georgia, where it is very hot. And I hope that everybody's staying cool out there. So let's go ahead and get the party started. We also want to thank our sponsor, the National MS Society. All right. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to welcome our wonderful guests. We have Kathy Costello, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Can Do MS. We also have Jackie Smozinski, who is the Associate Vice President of Community Engagement at the National MS Society. And we have Amanda Montag, who is the Chief Mission Officer at the MS Association of America. Welcome to Brain Chat, ladies.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we've got some powerhouses here tonight, and I cannot wait to get into this conversation about advocacy. You know, we have come so far in our ability to treat MS, and we would not be as far as we are without the help of advocacy organizations such as the ones that you all are a part of. So I'm really excited to talk about some of the services you offer and what we think are kind of the most pressing issues that need to be addressed as we are moving into the future of treatment with MS and also improving the lives of those living with MS. But before we do that, I'd love for everyone to go around and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this space. And we'll start with you, Kathy.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for having us all. This is a cool opportunity. I'm happy to be here. So I've been involved in MS care as a healthcare professional pretty much since the dawn of time.
So that's pretty early. I didn't know you were going to say that.
In all honesty, since 1988. So when you think about it in MS years, that's a long time because that predates when we had disease-modifying therapies. So I was first a staff nurse and then a nurse practitioner in academic medicine at the University of Maryland and then at Johns Hopkins. And after a long career as a nurse practitioner, I moved into the nonprofit space, first at the National MS Society, and then now with Can Do multiple sclerosis.
Awesome. That threw me off guard. Sorry about the dawn of time. That really it's great. But it was actually the dawn of time where MS was related, right? We had no treatments available in the 80s. And, it really people still do it because they're passionate about it. But certainly at that time when basically what we were offering was symptom management, you really had to have a passion to help and advocate for the people living with this condition. All right, let's go with Jackie next.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Williams, so much for having us on and talk about this such important work that we're all doing. My name is Jackie Smozinski. I am the Associate Vice President of Community Engagement for the National MS Society. And I started my journey with the MS Society, dating myself here also, but over 20 years ago, I think 24 years ago, and actually started in our fundraising department coordinating our readathon program. So those of you who have known the society for a very long time might remember that that fun program that we used to do. But I didn't come to the National MS Society with any personal connection to MS, really just looking to kind of get into the nonprofit space and start my career. Heard about the society through a friend. And when I started working for the society, I kind of fell in love. I fell in love with the community of people living with MS and just the work of the society. Ended up going back to school and getting my master's in social work a few years later, and then came back to the society to, I was hired to help build out a case management program for the Northern California chapter. So over the years, my roles have just evolved, and I've had the chance to kind of oversee a few different areas of programs and services for the society. And now, in my current role, I get to support a team who works with our support groups across the country and provides community-based education programs and other peer connections programs for the society.
I love it. So just got involved and stayed involved. It kind of reminds me of Atlanta. People move to Atlanta and they just never leave. So I think when people get into the space and start working with MS, they never leave.
It's true. It's
You
true.
develop such a passion for helping people. All right, Amanda.
Well, I suppose I'm the least a veteran amongst us, but I've been with MSA for 20 years this year. I have fallen in love with MSA, obviously, but also with the MS community. I think we are so lucky that we get to really, truly collaborate with each other to try to improve the lives of people living with MS. And we have a pretty great group of people that we get to work with and a great group of people that we get to support. So I feel super lucky to be here. And thanks for having us, Mitzi.
Absolutely. All right. So, if 20 years is the youngest veteran, then listen, we're definitely in good shape. All right. So, we talked a little bit about your connection to MS, but I want us to kind of take a 50,000-foot view and talk about, what does advocacy mean? It's a word that people use in many different spaces. They use it in politics, they use it in healthcare, we use it all over the place. But tell us what advocacy means in the context of our larger organizations that help, individuals with MS.
I'm happy to kick that off. I think that in the greatest sense, the largest sense, it's how we all work to improve access to high quality care and effective care, how we increase the expertise in MS care, limit the increasing costs, reduce healthcare disparities, and then if you look at it at the individual level, how do we help people become their own best self-advocate? So you can kind of take the policy view, but then you can kind of bring that down, not down really, but bring it to the individual level, which is as critically important as that public policy level.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts, ladies?
I think I was going to say something very, very similar. I think to me, advocacy is really personal, and a part of it is really it's about getting people connected to the right information and the right resources, so they can live their best lives, and so they can do so in a way that's really confident and feel connected, like throughout their journey. So I think when people think of advocacy, sometimes they are just thinking about kind of the work we do with our elected officials, but I think it's so much more than that, and really, about the individual and their journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Amanda?
Agree. Oh, yeah. I was just going to add, I totally agree. I think the one piece perhaps I'll add on that kind of ties it all together is, I feel like I've learned through the years that so much of advocacy is in storytelling, right? And how we listen to people's stories, how we help people tell their own stories in a way that lets them hopefully advocate best for themselves. And so there's a beauty, I think, in getting to work in patient advocacy, because all of us are so lucky to get to hear and listen and learn from people's stories and hopefully help them tell their stories too in a way that improves their lives.
Yeah, all excellent points. So when I think of advocacy, I think of it as each of our responsibility. Sometimes when people hear the word advocacy, you think that you have to have some big gesture. You have to go stand on the steps of the Capitol with a sign, and talk to your congressman. And although that's a part of it, just showing up to your doctor's appointments prepared, and advocating for yourself or that loved one can be a form of advocacy. So I think that it's all of our responsibility. And sometimes we think that it has to be something big when it's really all of those pieces that help people to advocate for themselves and also helps us to advocate for other individuals, in our various, respective areas of work and areas of life. So excellent points there. So let's think about, what does effective advocacy look like, right? Certainly all of us can tell our stories. All of us can, have gestures, but they need to have some type of impact, right? Some type of meaningful impact. And of course, we know that if you impact one person, you've made a difference. But in the broader sense, we would like to have the things that we are working toward to really help a broad spectrum of people. I'll never forget, I did a talk for the ACGME very early on in my career. And it was myself and several other, I was a resident at the time. And we had this great speech we were going to give about, patient-centered care and all this great stuff. And nobody came to our talk. And although we gave that lecture as if there were 100 people there, nobody heard it, right? So except the monitor who was in the back, who gave us a standing ovation, which we appreciated. But but it helps if people hear the message and receive the message and run with the message. So what does effective advocacy look like to you all?
It's so funny that you say that, Mitzi, because I totally agree with you. And I think we've all probably had those heartbreaking moments where we realize, oh my gosh, where are the people? We have this great message or this great program. And I have come to find, though, that sometimes I think there might only be one person in that room, but that person really needed to hear what the message was. And so I think less about scope in terms of what makes effective advocacy, and more really making sure that you're connecting people to each other and helping folks get the resources that they need. And I'm often reminded of that, though, that sometimes it is the programs that have had, 3 or 4 people in the audience. You think, my God, all the work that went behind doing this. And then afterwards, you spend an hour talking to the 4 who came, and you realize this was so important to these people. It really made a difference.
Absolutely.
I love that. I think you also made me think too about the importance of collaboration and advocacy too. And I think the MS movement as a whole does such a great job of bringing organizations together and really advocating together for change. So it's just another part that I love about working in the MS space and in the MS movement. It just feels so collaborative, and we can get on the same page together. It's just so impactful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I look at this in 2 ways, as we've already discussed, that there's the policy level and there's the individual level. And for individuals, we're asking a lot, right? So we're asking people to be their best self-advocate for their own healthcare. But when people come into the MS space, very often they're young and have not really encountered the healthcare system in very many ways. And so now we're asking them to do things when they really don't have the knowledge to do so, or the confidence for that matter. So that as we work with people and we create programs and connection opportunities, I think helping people understand about MS, about what good care looks like and what they deserve in terms of care. And then in a way, teaching them the how. How do you advocate for yourself? What does that look like? How do you have confidence in your own goals, your own values, your own needs, and then be able to state them not only to your healthcare provider, but for instance, to your insurance carrier, for example, to your employer, to your friends and family. There's many stakeholders in each person's life that we speak to. And in each of those cases, in a way, we become our own advocate for what's happening in our lives. And I think that in MS, that takes time, and it takes each of us as organizations to provide that type of education and connection and support so that people do develop that confidence to make sure they're able to tell people what they need and then get what they need in their healthcare. At the policy level, there's no one that does it better than the National MS Society. I mean, I'll go ahead and sing your praises, Jackie, and the praises for the organization. But at that level, it really requires expertise and experience not to mention persistence, never give up attitude. Again, knowing what's needed and not giving up until you get it. And there's not an organization better than the National MS Society. And I think the rest of us learn from the society, but also participate where we can to amplify that voice. And so that if we're needing to make a point or hoping for a policy change, I think we all hope that when we all band together, there's a larger voice and more people speaking on behalf of those living with this disease.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. And obviously, we wouldn't be able to do any of it without a really, really strong network of amazing, committed volunteers who every year are out there talking to their elected officials and, participating in our different advocacy efforts and sitting on different committees and things like that. So, and it, of course, is just one way to kind of get connected and be able to share your story. But it's the volunteers that make it possible and make it so meaningful.
You're right. It is about storytelling, right? When people are able to articulate their story, and the society actually helps people not develop their story. People have their own story, but how to speak to that story, and so that people do listen to what they have to say, and it really is powerful in affecting change. I have to say that if you've not been to public policy with the National MS Society, the sea of orange on the Hill in DC is pretty impressive. And not to mention the comments that come from certainly our representatives in Congress, but also their staffers on how much they value the National MS Society and the work that they do. It really is quite meaningful. I recommend if anyone can possibly be down there, it is something to behold.
So inspiring to see there, and if people can't get there, and I know that's difficult, but there's also ways to kind of do that virtually with advocacy events that we have too. So so much opportunity to get involved with locally, virtually, in DC, all of the ways.
Yeah. So in that regard, so when we're talking about public policy and things of that nature, there's so many issues that affect our individuals with MS, the people that I see in clinic, the volunteers, the people that you all engage with on a regular basis. So what are some of the most pressing or urgent issues that need to be addressed in our current space?
I think a big one continues to be the need for resources. So, we all struggle, and we all have wonderful, helplines dedicated to trying to get people the resources they need. But that's a real challenging thing in a disease that is chronic and very expensive. I think COVID.
I think we lost Amanda for a second there. If anyone wants to chime in into.
I mean, I was going to say along the same lines, I think ensuring access to care, ensuring that, all individuals that are living with MS have access to the latest treatments and high quality healthcare, I feel like is such a pressing issue. And obviously that includes advocating for affordable medications and comprehensive insurance coverage and specialized healthcare providers. But also like at that individual level, just like the support to navigate through our healthcare system that is so challenging and can be so overwhelming, especially I think when you're first diagnosed and just kind of starting your journey with the disease.
Yeah. And back to you, Amanda, you were talking about resources.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I cut out. I was just saying that I think there's so many needs. And I think when COVID hit, I know we all really, I think our hearts were breaking trying to help people with everything, right? Housing, food. But we focus a lot on the prices of therapies, which is clearly an issue. But there are other issues. So, folks can't afford an MRI. Folks need a cooling vest or a wheelchair. Basic living needs that we can't take for granted when we're working in the patient advocacy space, and we have people coming to us who have very basic needs that are not yet met. So that I think is something that we all struggle with, trying to meet the need. And I think that we do a good job collectively amongst us as MS Coalition members of trying to make sure that we're all doing the best we can with the resources we have to improve the quality of life of all those living with MS.
Yeah, I completely agree. It boils down to access, right?
Yeah.
So each of the things that we've talked about comes down to access to care, access to affordable care, access to resources, access to the things that help us live our lives every day, access to information. So if you're 20 something years old and now you're diagnosed with MS, think of the access issues that face you. It's access to treatment. How do I afford this? What in the world is a copay, co-insurance? What's an appeal process? How in the world would anyone know these things? But that's going to impact access to the right medication for someone and the right care. Access to services that are part of comprehensive care. For example, how would someone know what physical therapy can do for them if they're having some mobility issues, unless they know to ask that question and they actually know what that physical therapist can do? The same for mental health services. How do I access those? It's often taken care of by a different part of someone's insurance. So how do I actually access someone that I need? And on the bigger level, then, how do we ensure that there's access across the spectrum of treatments for disease modifying therapies, for example? And how do we help to make that affordable to everyone? These are big issues. I would think some of the biggest are access for people to the expertise of an MS specialist. That's just not everywhere. I lived most of my life in the middle Atlantic, where we had access up and down the East Coast. But if you get outside of major cities, that access doesn't exist. Right. So how do we help people in the areas that we're now calling neurology deserts? How do we ensure that that expertise is where people live, so that they also can have the care that they deserve? These are big issues, both at the individual level and at the policy issue that we struggle with, but I think that we work towards every day. And I find that when we all collaborate and find ways that we can do things together, we are often much better able to meet some of these access issues.
Yeah, I love what you all have said about collaboration, and we're going to circle back to that in a second. But all of these things really make me think about our social determinants of health. So this is an area I've become very interested in the past couple of years through my work focused on health disparities. And when we think about social determinants of health, those conditions in which people live, work, play, grow, age, which affect your access to the doctor, your health insurance, socioeconomic status, etc., sometimes these factors can have more to do or more of an effect on your health outcomes than the medicine you take. So if you go to an MS center and you're on the best therapy, but you don't have access to clean water, or you're in a food desert, or you don't have a safe place to exercise, etc., you can still have a poor outcome. And so I think that it's important to focus on these issues, which really impact people on the individual level, but also at the community level. And so I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to do that. So it's not that these things weren't focused on, but early on in my career, we were just really focused on keeping people out of wheelchairs. We were really focused on, trying to find effective therapies. And certainly, although we have not reached that goal with everyone, people are doing a lot better overall than they were 20 or 30 years ago when our first treatments became available. So now we're able to focus more on some of these broader issues outside of the clinic, but we still got to get them access to the clinic so that they can get the best treatments available for them. So let's talk about collaboration, because as you all have stated, in order to do that, there has to be collaboration. There's no one group that can do everything, just as there's no one person that can do everything. So let's talk a little bit about the MS Coalition. I think if anything, and I'm not sure when the coalition was formed, but I think if anything, one of the things I learned out of the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic is that there was a lot of sharing of information that wasn't as open before. I won't say people weren't willing to share, but I think that we all were trying to pool our resources and talk to each other. I remember physicians, we would get on calls, we would do monthly calls with folks all over the globe just to try to figure out how we can best treat our patients, what to look out for, what we should be concerned about, and all of these things. So let's talk a little bit about the collaboration between the organizations. And then I also want to talk about kind of individually, what are some of the service you provide, because certainly our patients organizations need to be aware of the services?
So I just was elected president of the coalition, which is remarkable.
Yay!
And
Awesome.
but having said that, I certainly have a lot to learn as well. But I think where I certainly saw this during COVID, where we really did work together, and my goodness, we had to work together because
Absolutely.
certainly early on we didn't know anything. And so we were not only trying to help people with MS, I believe we were trying to help each other. And so I think if we carry that forward, for example, Amanda and I recently participated with one of our pharmaceutical partners on educating people about a research effort, something that could potentially be of help to them in managing their MS. And if each of us, what we found was that we certainly each could lend our own experience and our own voice to the conversation. But when we settled on what the educational collateral, for example, would be, one of the things we thought about was how can we have a consistent and unified voice about the information so that if someone would go to Can Do MS, or they would go to the MSAA or the National MS Society, they would find similar information, right? And so I do that. I go to different websites and I try and read information. And in this way, we can have a consistent voice so that people are learning the information the same no matter where they're going. Now, we might not be able to do that with everything, but there are educational efforts, maybe even policy efforts, where we can have a unified voice. And I think that really helps our community learn and understand.
I totally agree, Kathy. I think that having people being able to trust the information that they are reading, that they're hearing, is just so important in that confidence that we were talking about in order for them to, feel good about managing through this disease. So I couldn't agree more about the importance of all having trusted information kind of coming together on that front.
We also I think we do a great job collectively and collaboratively in referring to each other. So yeah, I'm always amazed because I think I'm like Kathy too myself, where I would be on all of the websites and probably be a member of all of the groups. But oftentimes it's not the case, right? People come in the door to any one of our organizations for different reasons, and they might not go through another door. And so there are things that we can help those folks with, by referring them out to, the great programs that Can Do has, to the offerings that the society has, right? Like there are things that we do differently that can be a benefit to all those living with MS and the broader MS community. And I have always just been so proud of kind of how unselfishly we all share resources with the broader MS community to make sure that they're all getting to take advantage of everything that we all offer.
That's so true. We don't do the same things. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Here we are all in the same space of MS, but each organization does something a little different. And I think it adds to the whole community. And you're right. I think that the beauty is that we do share, we do collaborate. We share programs on each other's calendars. We promote different things because, again, there's just a lot out there and people are going to learn in different ways and they're going to access different kinds of information. And if we can present that through each organization, I think that we're helping each individual.
100%.
Absolutely. It takes a village, right? And I love that, there's this collaboration amongst you, but I also love that there is such a strong collaboration with the healthcare community. I have sat in and done programs and efforts with each of your organizations. And I really appreciate that when I send my patients there, I know that the information has been vetted by people who are in the field, people who are experts, people who are doing the work. And it is not something that someone got off of, a random website somewhere. I won't name any, but, nobody downloaded something and copied and pasted it, that there's really thought into the information that's provided and that it is sound information, that is, created through collaboration with healthcare providers, and other experts in the field and people living with MS, of course. So let's talk a little bit more. So let's dig a little bit deeper into each organization. So Kathy, I'll have you start with Can Do MS. So tell us a little bit about Can Do MS and some of the resources and programs they provide.
Sure, happy to. I'm sure we're all happy to talk about all the great things that we're doing. So Can Do MS was started 40 years ago this year by a former Olympic skier, the first alpine skiing medalist for the United States back in 1964. And he started the organization after he unfortunately was diagnosed with MS. And he started the organization in 1984. And his purpose was to help people identify what they can do because he felt a lot had been taken from him with MS. But he also felt that there were things that the healthcare community took from him because back then they told him, don't exercise, don't get overheated, basically go home and don't come back. And of course, he couldn't live that way. So he developed the Jimmy Huga Center, which helped people identify those very things that they really could do, maybe in an adapted way, but they could still reach the goals that they had in their life. Jimmy's no longer with us, but we carry his legacy forward in the many programs and engagement opportunities that we have through in-person community programs, through an array of online virtual programs that are live and those that are on demand. The purpose for our programs is information, to be sure, but it's also to help people with the how. For example, if you as a provider would say to a person, I really think that a little bit more activity would be beneficial to you, we would take that information and help people learn how, what kind of exercise activity or physical activity. So there's a lot of hours in the year where someone's not with their neurology team. And we're in that space trying to help people live each day the best way they can and to reach the goals that they have in their life. MS does not have to take that away from people, but often it's very difficult to see that when you're diagnosed with a disease that's so unpredictable and you have no idea what the future will bring. But I think having a partner in that journey in Can Do MS can be very helpful in learning how you can optimize each day. And to our point this evening of talking about advocacy, to help people gain that confidence and that knowledge to be their own best self-advocate.
Yeah, I love that. I love that concept. And I think it's so important because, again, as we are improving our ability to treat things like relapses and MRI changes, there really has been a shift in focus on holistic health, right? What can people do to help themselves? We want you to exercise. We want you to eat a healthy, well-balanced diet. We want you to meditate and do all the things to decrease the stress. And so I really love that concept. And I think, that it is broadening or becoming a part of the broader community as we are beginning to counsel people on these things and direct them to resources with expertise such as yours, that can help them, with the nuts and bolts of how to incorporate these things into their everyday life. All right, we'll go with.
Let me just add one last
Go,
point.
absolutely.
Sorry, but I think that one of the what we have found, which is such a powerful component, is that people learn best when they're able to connect with other people who are living with MS. So many of our programs, I would argue almost all of our programs, are more of a discussion, more of a collaboration, where we facilitate with healthcare professionals. But the idea is to really help people identify the issues that they're experiencing. And then as a group, identify solutions and those how-tos where people learn from others who have had some success and they can employ those same strategies in their own life. And I think when that's facilitated, the conversation doesn't necessarily go off the rails, but I think it stays on a topic, but where people can collaborate with one another. And we have found over the years that this is so powerful. And while we do have some lecture-based programming, I would say the vast majority of our programming is more in this connection and discussion type of learning.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Amanda.
Sure. So the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America was founded in 1970. So we've been around for about 54 years and really focused on improving the quality of life for people living with MS and their care partners. So some of our signature programs are cooling equipment and equipment programs in which folks who otherwise would not be able to afford accessible items or cooling equipment can get them free through MSIA. We also have an MRI access program. The program is currently on hiatus while we are looking for further funding, but the program has been around for over 20 years and helps people who can't afford an MRI obtain an MRI for free. We are hopeful that will be coming back quite shortly. We also have, to Kathy's point, a lot of educational materials. We offer a lot of resources for folks living with MS. We have a wonderful website. We have a ultimate MS treatment guide on our website, which is a very useful tool to help people kind of navigate the ever-growing landscape of disease-modifying therapies for MS and hear from fellow patients and wonderful healthcare professionals like you, Mitzi, about their experience with the different therapies. And we also have just embarked on a really exciting research initiative called MSIN, Multiple Sclerosis Implementation Network, which we're looking to learn how we can improve practice currently while also improving practice in the future. So we're building a network nationwide of MS neurologists and community neurologists and trying to identify how we can make sure that practice is good regardless of where the patient lives. So I think as we talked before about some of the kind of hot issues, pressing needs in the MS space, I think that is, to me, one that has emerged as one of a great issue of inequity. I'd like to believe that if I lived in the middle of nowhere, right, that the outcomes for my MS would be the same as if I lived next door to you, Mitzi. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. But we're hoping that through this initiative, we'll be able to collect enough data to really tell a story that will be compelling in terms of changing how MS is treated.
I love it. All right. Last but not least, Jackie.
All right, thank you. So the National MS Society, at the National MS Society, our mission is to cure MS while empowering people affected by MS to live their best lives. And at a high level, we're doing this in kind of three different buckets or three different ways. The first is to accelerate cures, unifying global efforts to get to cures faster, and increasing collaboration and innovation. The second kind of area is improving healthcare access so that people can get diagnosed and treated earlier and have more equitable access to care. And then the third kind of bucket of work is really to inform, to connect, and support people as they move through their MS journey. Our goal really is to be that trusted partner for honest and reliable information and support so people living with MS can feel a sense of belonging and support and improve their quality of life. So, since the third kind of bucket there is my passion and my expertise, I'll dive a little bit deeper there and share a couple of examples of what we're doing specifically to help people connect earlier in their journey. We don't have time to talk about all the things. The society has kind of a network of programs and services across the country and virtually, and hundreds of support groups and online communities. But one of the things that we've been doing for about the last year and a half is a new to MS program that happens every single month. It's the second Thursday of the month. We do a live program where we have an MS specialist, a volunteer who is also newly diagnosed, and a society staff member who facilitates a conversation. There's typically about 30 to 50 people who come to each one of these sessions, and it really allows people to have a more intimate conversation about their diagnosis. We talk about treatment options, we talk about wellness priorities, but more importantly, we give people that opportunity to connect with each other, like Kathy was saying. Oftentimes then our participants will join one of our monthly new to MS meetup groups that we're also facilitating. But then one of the things that's kind of cool and new for us over the last couple of years is that we're really trying to grow the way that we partner with people and provide this kind of one-on-one journey with people through their MS, or as they go through their journey with MS. So we give people that opportunity, the participants, an opportunity to meet with our staff one-on-one, every single participant. And then we can do our best to connect them to something else that they might be interested, like maybe it is some of our government advocacy programs and getting involved that way. or maybe there's specific questions and more support needed, and we can directly connect to one of our MS navigators. For those that don't know, our MS navigators are really just highly skilled, compassionate professionals who help connect people to information, to support, and to resources so they can move forward with their MS. Really, any challenge or question that comes up, our navigators are prepared to answer. And then one of the exciting things that we're doing that's kind of new is working really closely with MS specialists so they can refer patients directly to the society. So they can fill out an online form, give us a little bit of information, of course, with all of the with the consent of patients, provide us a little bit of information, and we'll reach out directly and kind of start that conversation and start working with people one-on-one. Again, there's hundreds of groups across the organization that are meeting in communities. We also have smaller community programs that are where we take kind of pieces and parts of our curriculum from our larger, big society programs and allow communities and professionals to work with us and like tailor the content to their specific needs and bring a smaller group of people together. And I'll just reiterate what Kathy was saying, that we're finding the exact same thing that people are really looking for, aside from the education. Of course, that's so important, but is that kind of connection with each other. And I think the really cool thing is watching those connections kind of blossom and grow over time and watching those relationships flourish. Oh yeah, I mean, I know we didn't talk about all of it, but those are the parts that I think are newer and exciting to me.
Of course, and the society is very involved in research, right? And funding innovative research ideas, as you said, to accelerate a cure. So such amazing work that each of your organizations is doing. And I'm so grateful to be a part and participate where I can with each of you and all the amazing work that's going on. So ladies, the time has gotten past us. So we are almost at the end of this episode of Brain Chat. It's been an amazing conversation, and I know that those who are watching will get so much out of it, either for themselves or for their loved ones or for those they know who have MS, to be able to connect them, to great resources. But before we go, I always like to ask, what are you excited about? What's on the horizon that you are excited about in the advocacy space? And I'll start with you, Kathy.
Sure. So I'll talk organizationally and what I'm excited about for Can Do MS. And I think that we have been working really hard over the last several years developing collaborative relationships with MS centers for comprehensive care around the country, and then having community programs in those areas, basically leveraging that fantastic expertise from the healthcare providers with our expertise in program delivery, and having people meet in person. It's been so nice to see people back out in person. There was certainly quite a few years where that didn't happen, and there's nothing quite like it. And being able to incorporate some information, lots of discussion, a little bit of coaching, even adding a little exercise, and working with these different centers has been really fulfilling. I think it's different for them. I had someone look at me the other day on a Zoom call, and she said, "Wait, you want me to facilitate a group and not give a lecture?" And I said, "Well, yes." And it's a big shift for a lot of people, but once someone does it, it changes their life, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, this is how I should practice, and this is how I should deliver in my practice. And seeing what happens to people in that setting where they can talk freely to a healthcare professional with that level of expertise, can talk with each other, the outcomes are actually outstanding. People do experience change, and they are able to do more and participate more than they could before that program. So exciting for me, as you can hear, is expanding that and having more locations and more collaborative relationships with different MS centers. It's been terrific. We also, two things. The other is to continue our focus on specific populations. This has been a wonderful process for us over the last few years in identifying populations who may not be receiving the care that we wish they could, or for lots of different reasons. but we've looked at the Asian community, we've looked at the Black community, we've looked at the Hispanic community, and have worked with people within those communities to better understand the needs, and also with healthcare professionals also within those communities for the same purpose, and are developing and delivering programs that are highly personalized to the different communities there, where we hope we can best meet those needs. Some of them include self-advocacy, and some are informational and helping people understand what care looks like and how they can be an active participant. So I think those two areas are of greatest interest to me in my work with Can Do MS.
Awesome. Jackie?
Sure. I mean, I think we're all probably really excited just about the pace in which MS research and treatment is progressing. It's also, I think, really cool to see more focus on patient-centered care, where patients' voices and experiences are really valued and taken into account in their healthcare decisions. But I think also in my role, what I'm really excited about is just like being able to be a part of and witness this like evolution of services and the way that we offer support to people living with MS. I know that, COVID obviously changed and accelerated how we connect and engage with people across the country, but I think it's really cool to see how the voice of communities is shaping the different programs and the different services that are offered across the country. Um, I'm really most excited. I also think about having the ability to connect people to others who have a really specific and shared lived experience with each
Mm.
other. One of the things I didn't mention was our MS Friends program, which is a one-to-one connection program that pairs people up with supportive and trained volunteers that they have something in common with, and just helps people build, helping people build those relationships, and also like being able to help people build community groups that are really interest specific. So, for example, I was working with a woman recently who had a really strong passion for ballroom dancing. And
Mm.
it was really important to her in her wellness and the way that she managed her way that she managed her MS, and she wanted to create a virtual group to help connect ballroom dancers and other dancers across the country. And I feel like we have the tools now to be able to do that and really like hone in on these like interest specific groups and connect people, even if they don't have someone in their neighborhood who might have some of the same interests. We have the ability to connect people wherever they are, and all the different kind of platforms and tools and ways to do that. So I'm just like, excited to kind of continue that journey for
I
people.
love it. Reminds me of that meetups. I think that was before COVID, but there was this site called Meetup where you could
Mhm.
look at all different types of interests, and whether you were a foodie or you like to hike or what have you, and just meet up with new people and engage in that activity. It's a really, really, really cool idea. All right, and last but not least, Amanda.
Okay, I think I am going to have to go with getting closer, right, to really addressing some of the health inequities within the MS community. I feel like certainly, Mitzi, you've been a champion for forever in this space, and I think it's something that MSA is really tries to lead in as well. And I feel hopeful that there are so many good people trying right now to actually move the needle on some pretty big issues that I it doesn't seem as distant as it did just not even a little bit ago. I feel like we're going to get to a place where in the MS space maybe can even be a lead in other chronic diseases to see we can show people how it can be done, right? We have so many wonderful people committed to really trying to address inequities in healthcare and in the MS community. And I feel very hopeful that some of those will come to good fruition soon.
Absolutely. Me too. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time, your expertise in the advocacy space, and for sharing such valuable information with our Brain Chat audience. Thank you to all of those who tuned into Brain Chat this evening, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. But before we do that, tell us your websites and tell us how people find you. We'll do a quick round robin. Amanda.
Sure. MSAA.org.
Okay, perfect. Jackie.
We're at nationalmssociety.org.
Perfect. And Kathy.
CanDo-ms.org.
All right. So all .orgs. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Everyone have a good night. And thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.